talk informally with staff members, and a lot of them were really dressed up as scary Halloween people. So that was cool too. I had last week a conference call with the Coastal Cities Leadership Group, the League of California Cities. Coastal cities are 61 of all of California's 61 coastal cities are members, and the leadership committee represents the 6 different districts along the coastline that correspond to the Coastal Commission's jurisdiction. We are planning a joint meeting with the county coastal group. There are about 16 or 17 California counties that are on the coast as well. And I'm chair of the cities group. My counterpart, the chair of the counties group, have been talking, and we have very similar interests and desire to meet with the Coastal Commission and really have a very good forward-looking dialogue with the Coastal Commission about coastal issues in California. So that takes a while to plan that. That'll be happening the middle of next year. In the meantime, we'll have our own separate meetings to prepare for that. And the last thing I'd like to just say is during this last election campaign, I spent probably more time going door to door than I ever have before. And one of the issues that really came up a lot is the question of density in Imperial Beach and increasing density, increasing development in Imperial Beach. Not development per se, but high density. And we had a zoning subcommittee that took a look at this about 2 years ago. Mr. Patton and I were members of that, and we made some adjustments, closed some loopholes, and I think we need to schedule or reinstitute or restart that subcommittee once again and take a look at our zoning. We thought about a 2.0 at the time. We just haven't gotten back to it, and I would hope that the council would move forward with that. All my comments. Thanks.
Yeah. About 2 weekends ago, the Imperial Beach Athletic Club held an over the line tournament. Had 64 teams, both men and women, and maybe Miss Brad could help me. Has IB had over the line before in your history? No?
Yeah, actually
in the 80s they had over the line. So, well, we kind of restarted that, and I was actually a judge for 2 hours, so that was scary. And then last weekend, the same group held a skateboard contest at Sports Park, and it was free to both boys and girls. And huge news, Mar Vista boys water polo team made CIF, and this Thursday they're in semifinals up in La Jolla.
Do you know one of the players?
Let's what's that?
Do you know one of the players?
I do know one. I knew many of the players. Okay. But my son's on the team,
okay,
so
yeah.
It's a big deal for Mar Vista. So wish them luck. Thank you.
Okay, so it's been a busy since our last one. We with the San Diego County Regional Airport as the authority representative. We met on November 1st for the ALUC meeting. October 22nd was the executive and finance meeting. October 29th, we had the ground transportation ad hoc committee, which I am chairing, which is really looking at ground transportation at the airport as a whole. It's very exciting. I'm glad to be chairing that because there's a lot of transportation issues, obviously, in our community that need to be addressed, and I'm excited to be a part of that. And then on November 5th, we had our audit meeting. The audit came back. There were no findings for the entire last year, which is great for an airport. Most airports have many findings, so it was really good. And then on October 25th, I was a representative at the Special Joint Powers Authority meeting for Councilmember Spriggs. It was the final vote on the pure water. They're moving forward, so there's some things that they need to work on, but it was a great move forward. So very excited about pure water. I know that Councilmember Spriggs has kept us well up to date about that, so it's really great. And then on November 6th, at the South County Economic Development Council, as your representative, we had 3 briefings that morning. One was from the airport, which I'd seen a couple times. I'm kind of part of that. And then the Soundtown Development Partnership, which was a really interesting San Diego's way to show ways to develop and fund different projects that they have in downtown San Diego. So that was cool. And then the iConnect program as well, which is a really interesting program for our South County, looking at right ways to connect local businesses with ways of funding. So it was a good meeting. So that's it.
Great, thanks. A couple weeks ago, we had the Sandag Borders Committee that I chair, and we took a field trip. We've actually been really good at getting out in the field to show the board members and partners some of the interesting issues on the border. That was a great project, a great trip. We took the new rapid bus from downtown all the way out to Otay Mesa, visited the CBX Cross-Border Express Bridge, which is really great if you haven't used it. That bridge reduces car trips by 3,000 each day, which has a significant impact on reducing emissions. So that's a great project. It's a huge success. I've used it many times. So that was really interesting. Then we went out to the CHP truck inspection centers, the facility that inspects trucks coming over the cross from Mexico in accordance with NAFTA, now called the USMCA. And then we went out to the site of the new transit center at Otay Mesa, which was really great. We were the first official group there. So that was really nice to see that. And then we saw the site of the new, what's called the Otay 2 border crossing, and that'll be a new border crossing, a pretty innovative one east of the existing Otay Mesa border crossing that the United States, California, and Mexico are negotiating, working on. So, and a number of other agencies. What was really illuminating on that is that when you see the long line of diesel trucks lined up on the other side of the border, you really get an idea of how much impact all those idling trucks have on air quality. In the winter months, when the wind blows offshore and blows from east to west, as it does, and surfers love that wind, it also, you'll see all the pollution out over the ocean. That is not good for our kids in terms of asthma. So it was really, really great to see investment from our tax funds going back into projects that were increasing economic activity, reduce childhood asthma, and improve air quality, as well as improve our quality of life. So really great field trip. It's always a good idea to get out in the field, and really great to see those new rapid transit buses. Hector Venegas is here from the Borders Committee. Thank you, Hector, for doing that. And Chairman Sano, thank you for supporting those kinds of field trips. Really, really great. The Dia de Muertos celebration at the IB Library was this weekend. Really great. The Ballet Folklorico Nahuatlan from Mar Vista High performed. Really, really moving and inspiring. It was a packed audience. So I want to thank our library for supporting that. And then I went over to the skate park contest with the IBAC, and that was great. A lot of kids there, and we look forward to expanding that skate park. It's the most widely used public recreational amenity we have. And then, Mr. Patton, you know, the great thing about water polo and swimming, which has a long tradition here in Imperial Beach, is that most of those kids become lifeguards. So that's a lifeguard training program, and those kids go out and get jobs, maybe join the military or the SEAL team, or go on to play in college and stuff. So that's a great feeding program, and that's why it's so important to get our new pool built at Mar Vista High School. Yeah, so thank you for all your leadership in making that happen as well. And obviously the partnership with Mar Vista High School and Sweetwater District. And I know now Mr. Hall has an announcement.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, there are a few things going on in the community on Veterans Day, which is the 11th, which is Sunday. In the morning, there is the half marathon, and that will be followed by a Veterans Day commemoration that will be held at Dunes Park at noon. So both of those things are happening on Veterans Day, which is on Sunday this year. We wanted to remind the public once again that there is a joint study session of the City Council, the DRB, the TAC, and the Parks and Recreation Committee on November 14th from 5:30 to 7:30 at the library to talk about the LCP and the general plan. There's a ribbon cutting for the new fitness court that's going to be located at Dunes Park. That'll be December 1st. And that's a Saturday. That'll be at 11 o'clock in the morning. There will be a ribbon cutting for the new restrooms in Veterans Park before your next meeting, your next city council meeting, which will be on December 5th. So hopefully everybody will be able to enjoy those new restrooms. They've been a long time coming. They're a great addition to the community. And then Courtney, who is our events coordinator, has asked me to inform the public and the council that we are having an IB Livin' t-shirt contest that we had talked about in council meeting. We're looking for designs with a Southern California vibe. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're looking for some new t-shirts, some ideas of what we can do. You've seen the t-shirts with the logo on it, whatnot. And I think it was Councilman Patton made a suggestion that maybe we look at some IB Livin' t-shirts. I've also heard that there is some kind of a reward for that. I think it's lunch with Courtney or something. Actually, I don't think it is. she wouldn't go to lunch with me, but I think that there's some really fun prizes that she has for some of the contest winners. And then just with the winter coming on, Chief French had an opportunity to go and learn what to expect from the weather this winter. So he wanted to give us a quick update on what to expect from the winter weather this year.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, City Council. On October 30th, I went to a winter weather workshop, which was put on by County OES, and it had a lot of different people from a lot of different organizations. But the main one I'll kind of talk about tonight is the meteorologist from the National Weather Service and his winter weather forecast. With all the record temperatures we had this summer, we had 36 straight days of 70-degree minimum temperature and above. And just with the heat and all, some of the high temperatures and the warm water we had, they're looking at developing a weak El Nino this winter, which lately hasn't produced the rain like El Ninos usually do. The La Nina years, so our last two wet winters were La Ninas. So they're looking at a weak El Nino this year, and they're looking at below average rainfall. And kind of like it's been the last couple of years, 2 or 3 storms that, major rain, major winds, not the continuous, what we're used to here in Southern California. So that's what we're looking at. But you know how weather is, it's always unpredictable. So this is what the forecast was. A couple
Okay, my calendar dropped. All right.
Great. Any other announcements? Madam Clerk has an announcement.
Okay, we are at the public comments portion of the agenda, and this is the time for the public to address the City Council on any items not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. The mayor will recognize you, and when you come to the microphone, please state your name and place of residence for the record. You will be able to speak for 3 minutes. The goal is to allow everyone the ability to comment. The City Council is prohibited by state law from taking action or discussing items not included on the agenda. If the item you wish to comment on is on the public portion of the agenda, we will take your comment when we get to the item on the agenda. Please direct your questions and comments to the City Council. And again, the blue comment forms are in the back of the chambers. If you need to fill one out, please do so and turn it into the Deputy City Clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have for public comment, Susan McLaughlin. Susan McLaughlin, followed by Josie Hamada, and then followed by Valerie Estevez.
Hi, good evening. My comments and questions are specifically addressed and related to Mr. Dedina and related to eminent domain. I know, Mr. Dedina, I am very much aware that you're in favor of managed retreat, I'm tall, which quite frankly is a camouflage term for condemnation of eminent domain, and it can result in eminent domain and condemnation of people's properties and homes. I am not sure how many people in this room or in the community of Imperial Beach are familiar with condemnation of eminent domain, so I'll briefly explain. It's when the government forces a property owner to sell their property to the government, local or otherwise, where the property owner has no choice in the matter. Under the so-called managed retreat, the city, i.e. the local government, then owns the property to retain, lease, and collect the income as well as the properties to sell them when they so choose and to keep the sales proceeds. Funds to keep for a future date for an occurrence that people like that support this idea and program, think may happen in 100 years or maybe not. So, I would like to know if you were able to comment. Do you have any comments? If not, I can continue on with how I feel.
Yeah, you heard the comments from
Okay.
the public. Heard.
I know that the city of Del Mar, of course, has obviously, that didn't work out so well for that local government. Once the citizens of Del Mar did educate themselves onto what managed retreat really was, they rejected it. And I'm sure the citizens of Imperial Beach will come to the same conclusion once they have been educated. And if they aren't able to do that on their own, I'll be sure that I can help them with that. The city council agreed that planned retreat will not be a part of this long-term strategy for the city of Del Mar with dealing with this sea level rise, despite the state coastal commission's urging to include this idea. Planned retreat, also so-called managed retreat, is a strategy of removing seawalls, roads, homes, and other structures gradually over the years in advance of rising sea levels. Their opinion and comments were that it is the door that lets the vampire in. It really endangers their community, and I believe it will endanger ours. I own, and my husband alone own $7 million worth of real estate in Imperial Beach along Seacoast Drive and within 3 blocks in. And I really don't think that Imperial Beach is in a position to be able to start purchasing all of our properties. So I hope that that's not the direction that they are going to be up against the community with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now we have Josie Hamada. Josie will be followed by Valerie Estevez and then Dan Percival.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and Mr. Hall. What I would like to say today is that voting is the ultimate of my life. So I'm always a community poll watcher. This time around, because in the primary, it was kind of chaotic in some of the poll places. So I had a great discussion with Mr. Vu about how to improve visual to our community. And so this time I'm going to be writing a letter to Mr. Vu because the first time ever they had it very visually, because in some of the places they had double polling. And so the different places was very visually done. And everybody was just so happy that actually it was educating the community. And because in 2 of the polling places, we shared that with San Diego. And so I was so afraid that our community was, when you get in line and there's a lot of people, and you might, because what happened in the primary, you got in a line and you were in the wrong line. And so I did not want our community to go through that again. So this time around, when I went around with a friend to look at all of them, to ensure that was done right, and he did an excellent job. But kudos to one of our special polling places, which was like, I thought, how do you welcome community? Was over here at the Calvary, because what they did, they had coffee pots, they had cookies. They said, well, it was just so welcoming that there were so many this time around. I know there were more people that voted this time, but everybody really wanted to participate. And that engagement is what makes us a community. And that engagement is what makes us all participate. And so that, I think, is one of the things that we can all be proud of from IB.
Thank you. Valerie Estevez.
Hi, my name is Valeria Seves, 1121 9th Street. I'm here for IB Chamber today. I would like to congratulate our mayor on his successful run as the returning mayor of Imperial Beach. Also, we have Military Appreciation Day Sunday, and everybody is welcome. Hot dogs, hamburgers, there is a beer garden. The food and sodas are open to the public. Anybody can join us. Also, we did hear about the ribbon cutting. We are changing up. Christmas comes to IB this year. The lighting of the Christmas tree will be on Friday, November 30th, along with we're gonna hook up with the farmers market and have the lighting at 6 o'clock. And then the Fleet Reserve Association will once again be doing the ceremony of the Pearl Harbor Remembrance on December 7th. And then we are dark in November and December for the Chamber of Commerce breakfasts. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dan Percival. Dan will be followed by Dante Pimentuan, and then Cheryl Quinones.
Thanks for giving me your time again. I need to stop bugging you on the street. I'm sorry.
Dan, just say your name for the record so when the clerk
Daniel
has the...
Percival,
Thank
129
you.
date. I've been told by all the people here that nobody will meet with me, and you guys got 29-inch sidewalks down there in front of the Marriott. Federal standards are 60 inches. You can get a waiver down to 48. Okay? Now, since the city has told the Marriott to stop parking there, every one of those pictures is a picture of them doing that you guys told them to stop. Is somebody going to help me? Thank you.
Thank you. Dante Pimentuan.
Good evening, Dante Pimentuan, 1300 East Lane, Imperial Beach, 91932. Just wanted to say thank you to Valerie Acevas, Darnisha Hunter, Mo Camacho, and Dane Crosby for stepping up as residents for coming to the podium to run for city council and for mayor. So I wanted to thank them. Also wanted to thank the Marines. There's about 600 Marines coming this weekend for helping out the CBP, Customs Border Patrol, and the Homeland Security. And Marine Corps birthday ball. I'm a Marine Corps veteran myself, so November 10th is our birthday. November 11th is Military Appreciation Day. And the reason that these Marines are coming down from Camp Pendleton is to help out the Homeland Security for our border security. So I'm asking the city council and the mayor to come out and welcome them and show them your support. So I'm asking that you guys go out there and show the residents of Imperial Beach that you support that.
Yeah.
So I'm making my public comments, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to ask the council and the mayor if they can come out there and support those folks, those young men and women coming out to support our Homeland Security. Okay, for that. So if that could be something that could be featured in the Eagle Times, it shows the unity. We're a very patriotic town here in Imperial Beach. We love our military. We love our law enforcement. And so I just ask you to consider that, show your support, because what you're doing is you're representing us as well when you do that. So these are fine young men and women, law enforcement too, Customs, Border Patrol, Homeland Security, sheriffs. These are all people that are keeping us safe. And our Marines and our Navy and our SEALs, they deserve that kind of acknowledgement from the city of Imperial Beach. So, Mr. Mayor, I hope that you can show your support by taking a photo with those Marines that come down from Camp Pendleton to help out our Homeland Security. So, and if we can get photos and we can have that acknowledged on November 11th for Military Appreciation Day, that would be awesome, Mr. Mayor. That would be just awesome. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you know, one thing I should have done during my announcements, and I did not. Earlier today, we actually did meet with the Marines and with Captain Slentz from Naval Base Coronado. Captain Slentz was going to come and address the community tonight. He was asked by his superiors to refrain from doing that at this point in time because all of the details have not been established. There will be Marines in our community for probably at least 6 weeks. They will be at NOLF. We had a chance to go down today and talk to them about how they'll be set up, making sure that they did feel welcome, making sure that, again, in Imperial Beach, we support our military, just as Mr. Pimentuan stated. As we know more, and as the military is allowed to give details about the deployment of those Marines, we will share it with the public. He was going to be here tonight and was asked not to. I don't know why, but as soon as we have more information, we will definitely share it with the public. But they are fine young men and women that we saw down there being here to help our our community, and they're very welcome here. So,
Mr. City Manager, who was it? Just you, or were there others with you?
no, I'm sorry, that's correct. So the management team from the city and the mayor were there. We did talk to. I'm sorry, and Councilmember West. We were able to talk to the CO of Naval Base Coronado, as well as the Master Sergeant who is leading the Marines, as well as some of the officers from the Marines that will be in town. So very good group, and they're going to do a really nice job. So thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl Quinones.
Cheryl Quinones, Iris Avenue. My address is on the card. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff. First off, I'd like to thank Lori Bragg. For 4 years, I have looked at you as kind of a mentor. Your graciousness, your style, your representation. I wish I could just be half of you. You've made us proud as a councilwoman, councilperson, and I'm glad to have made your acquaintance. And though we're not personal friends, we're professional friends, I believe. And I want to honor you tonight for your dedication of 12 years for our city and all the things that you've done for us, for all the children and all of us growing up. You've made our life better in Imperial Beach. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and from my children and my grandchildren. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Now we have Sandag Chair. Sorry. Oh, right. Sorry. We have a special presentation. Mr. West will make.
I just wanted to, before we get started, on Thursday, November 1st, was the National City does their second honoring mark. As a naval officer and 24-year veteran, it's really important there to be a part of it. And I was really moved behind. When I get around all our young sailors and Marines, it means a lot. Something that I remember those days. I was a sailor, need 1 and need 2, and how scared I was. This is the appreciation from ours. I know you got a certificate of appreciation from everybody else. There are 152. So I'm presented to Steph Felix, recognition of your outstanding achievement as STEM scholarship. City of Imperial Beach, I recognize your efforts for continue your academic. Thank you for leadership, community, and make gift.
I'll let you know that we are in the process, and we've been spending almost like the last 6 months going around to all 18 cities and the county of San Diego and providing a kind of an update. We had a challenge in 2017, and we got feedback that, hey, maybe we could improve our communications to our local cities as to what we've been doing as a regional planning agency, a transportation planning agency, and even a construction of project. So our brief presentation this evening is to give you an update of everything that happened last year. I know I'm sorry we can't come to update you on 2018. That will be coming probably in a few months. But 2017 is our focus. We want to try to provide, let's see if I can get this. Oh, good. We want to do 4 things. We want to give you a quick regional look at what Sandag has been working on and accomplished. We want to focus on Imperial Beach accomplishments and our 2018 focus as an organization, and provide you an opportunity to ask questions and give us any guidance you have as to where we should be emphasizing things in the future. Could we start the video? This is the regional look at transportation.
With the construction of highways, transit systems, railways, and bike and pedestrian networks, 2017 was a literal building year for the Sandag Board and its partner agencies. Revenue from our region's Transnet half-cent sales tax, leveraged with outside matching funds, continue to power dozens of projects throughout the region, as well as widespread environmental preservation efforts. These investments have taken place throughout the region, from Oceanside to South County, to the urban core to suburban East County, providing travelers with more and more choices. The Mid-Coast Trolley is the biggest transportation project ever undertaken in San Diego County. It will extend the Blue Line trolley 11 miles from Old Town north along the I-5 to UC San Diego and into University City. When the line and its 9 new stations open in 2021, it is expected to attract 21,000 on UC San Diego's West Campus and Medical Center Drive on the East Campus. Build NCC is an all-encompassing project that includes highway, rail, environmental, and coastal access improvements for cities of Encinitas and Solana Beach and the North Coast Corridor. Work also broke ground this year on a comprehensive $102 million effort to restore the lagoon itself. The replacement of the rail bridges over the lagoon are happening simultaneously in order to minimize impacts on the sensitive environment in that area.
We get to work integratively with the rail and the freeway work, and that integration is through our partnerships with Caltrans and Sandag. It's not often that an environmental organization gets to really sit at the table with the people planning and designing and actually implementing transportation. And we were able to give recommendations on what we think needed to change in the corridor to allow the system to be more natural. And they took that advice and they're implementing it.
Many other important additions to the transportation system have made major progress during 2017. Progress continued on the South Bay Rapid project. From the Otay Mesa border, passengers will be able to travel through Otay Ranch on a dedicated guideway into eastern Chula Vista. The Rapid buses will be able to use a new direct access ramp recently added to Interstate 805 and connect to downtown San Diego. This dedicated avoiding the freeway ramps and the hassles of surface street traffic.
These are the first freeway level transit station platforms in San Diego County.
These stations opened in the first quarter of 2018. Work continued at multiple locations along the Coastal Rail Corridor, known as LoSan. In partnership with the North County Transit District, the Oceanside Transit Center was expanded to increase the number of trains that can board passengers simultaneously and to allow freight trains to pass through. The $28.1 million upgrade made the station more efficient by adding a third track and an additional platform for the roughly 1.2 million passengers that use the station every year. Work also continued on the Elvira to Morena double track project. This segment will add a 2.6-mile second track from State Route 52 to just transportation program also achieved some important new milestones in 2017, including the opening of the State Route 15 commuter bikeway. The approximately 1-mile bikeway links the mid-city communities of Kensington, Talmadge, Normal Heights, and City Heights with the Mission Valley community, running along I-15, but safely separated from vehicle traffic. A 1-mile segment of the Inland Rail Trail in the city of San Marcos was completed in February 2017. This segment is part of a 21-mile bikeway that will connect from Oceanside to Escondido. Progress continued on the Bayshore Bikeway, which will eventually extend 24 miles all the way around San Diego Bay. Relief is on the way for one of the urban core's most frustrating bottlenecks. Work advanced dramatically on the Genesee Avenue interchange over the last year, with a new widened 10-lane bridge and more efficient on- and off-ramps expected to open in 2018. The effort to create a third border crossing in the region in East Otay Mesa also received a big boost. The state of California awarded the State Route 11 project $45 million to help pay for the acquisition of property where the new border crossing will eventually sit. We wished the South Bay Expressway a happy 10th birthday in 2017. Sandag acquired the rights to operate the tollway about 6 years ago. The Sandag board immediately cut the tolls on the facility to relieve congestion in eastern Chula Vista and draw traffic away from the I-805. The Sandag iCommute program worked hard to achieve its mission of reducing traffic congestion and greenhouse gas emissions by promoting alternative means of transportation. Successes during 2017 included the region's busiest ever Bike to Work Day, with more than 10,000 bike commuters visiting one of more than 100 pit stops throughout the region. iCommute partnered with Uber to expand the iCommute Guaranteed Ride Home program, offering free rides to alternative commuters facing an urgent need to get home. iCommute also partnered with Waze Carpool, who was subsidizing up to $50,000 for carpooling to the highest employment areas in the region. In early January 2017, the U.S. Department of Transportation selected the San Diego region as one of the 10 designated proving grounds in the nation to encourage testing and sharing information around autonomous connected vehicle technologies. Sandag, the city of Chula Vista, and Caltrans District 11 teamed up to seek the proving ground designation.
The proving ground gives our policymakers and the public an opportunity to engage in how this technology is ultimately shaped as it comes into the marketplace.
It's been an amazing year. Stay tuned. There's more to come in 2018.
Well, that's a quick summary of what we do on a regional basis. A lot of projects you probably recognize. Could we pass out that hand? Have you already gotten the handout? Okay,
Got
good.
it. Yep.
So in the handout that we gave you, on one side of the paper is a regional capsule, and then there's also an Imperial Beach summary on one side. One of the things why we emphasize the region for a minute, there is a map on your handout, and I want to show the audience as well. This is a digital representation of how traffic comes into and goes out of Imperial Beach. It is a way of showing the density upon which traffic comes in and out of your city. And every city that we visited, they has that kind of route-like pattern that comes out. And it really emphasizes the fact that all of San Diego is a regional transportation network. And it is kind of the mission of a Sandag to try to prioritize what the region as a whole needs, what would work for the region as a whole, and try to hopefully go out and look for money so that we can build the projects. And I drove down from Del Mar, and I know specifically that we got a lot of bottlenecks still to work on. And so our hopefully in the future we can make continual improvement in that particular area. So the video covered these particular items from a regional standpoint. Before I focus on Imperial Beach, I'd just like to compliment and thank Mayor Dedina, who's been working on our Borders Committee and been an active member of our board, and you've done an awful lot to help. You've helped me a great deal on a number of issues, and I appreciate that. Mayor Pro Tem West, you've been keeping at it, and I appreciate the times you've been able to participate. And congratulations on your moving on. I'm also moving on, so I really appreciate your efforts. Imperial Beach, we have been able to provide Transnet monies. That's the half-cent sales tax. Those are the kind of monies from fiscal year 17 and to date. Most of what our efforts have been is on the Bayshore Bikeway. We've gotten into construction. We've helped with a climate action plan, providing technical assistance to your city. And Allison Moss will be talking about the Bayshore Bikeway in just a second. So we're trying to provide funds for you locally, but also create that Bayshore Bikeway network that you've all been working hard for. I'd also like to highlight the fact that this year we have hired a new executive director who will be reporting to work December 3rd. His name is Hassan Estrada. He's the chief executive, or has been the chief executive for SCAG, which is the Southern California Association of Government, huge planning organizations in the LA area. And we've been lucky enough to recruit him down here to help us at Sandag. He's got not only the vision and the energy that we hope will help us, he is a consensus builder. And he, I think, teaming up with our exceptional staff that we have in our organization and his leadership, I think we're going to be really set for the coming year and the years ahead. I also want to report that 2017, we received a lot of input from different organizations that, hey, Sandag, you can improve some of the things that you do. And we've taken that input and encapsulated it in what we call our plan of excellence, which focuses internally on making sure that our processes and our quality of what we do is up to standards. And part of the reason we're here and communicating with our agencies is from this effort and from the feedback that we've gotten. So that is progressing, and we'll be producing a final report at the end of the year as to the progress we've made for the plan of excellence. I'd just like to focus on a couple of things for this year. We're building an awful lot of things, and if you have any desire to go out and put on a hard hat and see what our projects are, we welcome that. We'd be happy to provide a tour of some of these projects. But the two blue ones that I've highlighted here, we're doing our San Diego Forward. Every 4 years, we produce a new long-range projection as to what the needs of the San Diego region are for transportation. And that is, we've been getting a lot of input from a lot of stakeholders, and that is in the process of being developed. We're also going to be in the next few months looking at our housing needs, regional housing needs assessment. The state of California gives us a number as a region, and then Sandag, working with each of the cities, has the job of figuring out what's a fair goal for each city to try to meet these housing requirements. And that's going to get very active in the next few months. Okay, and then the last thing I like to do is we, as I mentioned, we're doing a lot of outreach, and we would love to have any guidance from you as to what you need to, we need to be focusing on. So it's a opportunity to let you know what we're doing, but also for you to tell us what you think we should be working on, or any questions. I've got Robin Watner who can answer all the questions that you give me. So that's all we have.
Thank you so much for that presentation, all the work you guys do. We really appreciate it. Mr. West, I know you had a question.
I do. Chair Sonell, thanks for coming out. I really appreciate it. Is one of the things that I think is, when we participated a couple weeks ago in the transportation vision for our county, one of the things that really concerned me a little bit was that the intermodal transit center wasn't really discussed by many of our county representatives. And I think as an airport authority guy, I think it's very important that is really a centerpiece and focal point of our transportation scheme for the entire region downtown. And, it's going to take MTS and Sandag, but I really want to make sure that is a priority for Sandag as we move forward, because it's really the corner piece to really making our airport better and making transportation better, so we can get people, especially from our community here in South Bay. I'd love to be able to take the trolley to the airport to get there. So I just want to make sure that the ITC becomes real. And Chair Sonell, I am more than willing to help work with Sandag to really help that process, because we really want to make sure as we redevelop Terminal 1, it's really important that we get it done.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. And in the last, I'd say, 2 months, things in that area have gotten very active. We have had a number of meetings with the airport authority and with the port and ourselves, and everybody recognizes that we have a placeholder in our long-range plan, but that needs to be rethought, revisited, updated, and naturally the question comes, where do you get the money? Yeah. And so I know the city of San Diego and the mayor there is involved, and so we're trying to get all the people together, because I think everybody sees that the time is right. We got to get it moving on it. So good point.
I also think that there's synergy, and also I think that there's some, the airport has actually looked at ways to help fund those projects that are off the airport, as long as they're linked to the airport. So
and we welcome that.
Great.
Mr. Sprague.
Thank you very much for your report and for your work, Sandag. I was the mayor's alternate a couple years back, and attended a number of meetings, and appreciate the work that Sandag is doing. I actually had two quick questions. They may not be quick answers, but things for further thought. We are the South County's beach. We're a little bit different in that regard than the other beach communities who serve distinct areas along the coastline to the north of Coronado. Our service area is maybe 250 to 350,000 people in the South County who use this as their beach recreation center. It seems to me, and this is just a preliminary thought that we can discuss at some other time, we really, because we have such an influx of visitors half of the year or more, and are becoming more discovered and more popular as a visitor destination, the impact on the community is significant. And there's no real transportation or public transportation plan that includes transit, parking, other solutions that will alleviate our neighborhoods from this horrible parking challenge that we have, especially the community neighborhoods within 5 or 6 blocks of the beach. So it seems to me that because we have such a large service area, and this is a regional issue outside of Imperial Beach, that we could benefit from some thinking, and our city manager isn't here right now, but our planning staff is, some coherent thinking about how to address this issue and help both the visitors and Imperial Beach at the same time. It's a real sort of a micro-regional transportation challenge that's unique to our beach community. Yeah.
I'll just, I think this is a key time to begin crystallizing those needs. To have the discussion at your city, and then be able to provide those needs up to Sandag from a standpoint of it's a regional issue, it's a regional need, and that's what we're trying to do, is take all the various projects and identified needs that people look for, and make sure that we're capturing those either for the immediate time frame or for a longer term time frame, so that because what we find is it takes a long time to plan it, to environmentally check it, to go out and get money for it. So the sooner those ideas and needs are identified and filtered up through your representatives, that would be great. That would be very helpful.
Thank you. It's the kind of regional issue we can't
Do by
solve
yourself.
ourselves.
Exactly.
So it's a perfect Sandag challenge. The other thing is the regional housing needs assessment process. This has been looked at, at a state level with proposed legislation. There's lots of different concerns that different communities have about how much of the regional housing demand each community should be asked to absorb. I think all that I would ask is that it's a fair process, and that it doesn't exempt some communities, as it has, from the need to absorb some of the regional housing demand. And that includes affordable housing demand as well, so that it takes into consideration, all the demographic considerations of the community, and whether it already has a high burden of moderate and low income individuals, as well as other factors. So I hope that this process will be fair going forward, and that Imperial Beach and maybe some other communities won't be asked to absorb a disproportionate amount of the housing demand versus other communities that are not absorbing their fair share.
Well,
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we are trying our best to pre-think and make sure that the process that is used at the board level is a fair process, and it's a process that is well thought out ahead of time, and then we get everybody involved in making sure that we're allocating in an equitable manner. It's a tough issue, and we're being really aggressive in the number of housing that we're estimating we're going to be needing. We understand the housing issue throughout the region, and but your comments are well taken.
Additional questions, comments? I wanted to thank you for the presentation, and just a number of things. First, we are very grateful to the support of Sandag for investment in Imperial Beach. The Bikeway Village investments, as well as the Bayshore Bikeway investments and the Bayshore Bikeway investments are much appreciated. We're getting a lot of traffic along there, and that's linked to our economic development now and then future development scenarios. And it's really great to see our residents, as well as residents around the region, enjoying those amenities. Number two, again, we talked about the Borders Committee, but as the chair of that committee, it's been really instructive to see the extent that Sandag is engaged in international diplomacy and working with Mexico proactively to get those investments made, and really to see those major investments in transit and really highways have a significant impact on reducing air emissions. So that's a huge achievement. And then third, we love the Sanalijo Lagoon project, because the idea of these adaptation projects is that they reduce the need for things like retreat, which everyone wants to avoid. So, and the most important part of that project is one of the engineers on the project, Marathon Construction, is Joe Ellis, who is a lifelong IB local, and our coastal engineering guru, who's really involved in our shoreline tidelands advisory committee. So that's a really great project. And as the chair of the Shoreline Preservation Committee, it was great to take a field trip there, which again, we thank Sandag for allowing that to happen, to really instruct the new board members and committee members in what was going on. And for me, at least for the Borders Committee and the Shoreline Preservation Committee, those are like advanced graduate level seminars and really discussing highly technical issues and policy issues. And Chairman Spriggs is on the committee with me in Shoreline Preservation. It's really illuminating to see the interaction and consensus building, and sort of folks really asking how we we deal with these issues like sea level rise and coastal flooding in a really innovative way. So again, it's been a real pleasure to be involved with you. Your staff are really, really great to work with.
We're
And
very happy to
yeah,
be able
so
to
it's
work
really,
with
really
all board
great.
members, I think, are.
Yeah.
And that North Coast Corridor project was unique in the fact that it not only is doing freeway and double tracking, but it's in the San Elijo Lagoon environmental. So the whole thing was packaged together as one package, mitigation and everything together, and go to the Coastal Commission to get that approval. So we're very proud of that issue.
And then finally, there's a little bit I've noticed recently, politically driven drama on the board about need for transit. This city understands that our residents require transit to get to work, to get to school, and to reduce traffic impacts in the region and make sure our residents can get along. It's an important part of our future. So, I think we've generally supported investments in transit. Councilmember Bragg is a member of the MTS board, is our transit champion. So we're going to continue to support all different types of modes of transportation, including bikes and transit and highways and improving our roads. So anyway, thank you for all the work you've done.
Thank you very much for your time. I think you have Allison coming up
Yep.
in just a second.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Hello? I'm Mike? Okay, great. Apologies for sitting over here, but I have some visuals and things that I'm going to want to point to, and I understand you won't see the red pointer, but you'll see the mouse. So, my name is Allison Moss. I'm a project manager at Sandag, and I'm here to present on the Border to Bayshore Bikeway project. I'm joined by Public Outreach Officer Brandy Schweitzer, and she has a sign-up sheet that she's going to pass around. So if you want to stay informed about the project, you can go ahead and provide your information there. So good evening, everyone. I have been told this presentation is a little long. I agree. I'm going to try to get through it pretty quickly, but then be available for questions afterward. So I'm here primarily to do an overview of the project, but also to announce that we have an important outreach event coming up on November 13th. And just to let everyone know sort of what that's about, and to invite you. So how does the Border to Bayshore Bikeway fit in? So it's part of an early action program that Sandag has. It's about 40 projects totaling $200 million of investment. So this is Transnet half-cent sales tax money. These projects are fully funded through construction. There's no local match required by jurisdictions. And some of them are also leveraging grant funding, ATP's Active Transportation Program funding as well. The Border to Bayshore project is depicted here as this huge arrow connecting the port of entry in San Isidro all the way to the Bayshore Bikeway, right around here. And this is our target audience. So it's really anyone. It's not necessarily people who are currently riding bikes and feel comfortable sharing the lane with car traffic or even a painted bike lane. It's the type of people that you see riding on the Bayshore Bikeway on the Strand. So families, kids, older people, people of all abilities. And I'm just going to show a couple examples of facility types that we have recommended for the Border to Bayshore project. Helps to see sort of built examples or even renderings. Generally, what you need to get people of all ages and abilities comfortable on a bike is either physical separation from motor vehicle traffic or traffic calming. So this is a buffered bike lane. This is downtown. This provides a buffer between parked cars whose doors swing open and then moving traffic. It helps especially on hills where the speed difference is high. This feature is called a bend out, and I'm going to use the handy mouse just to show you. Normally somebody on a bike gets to an intersection, and that's kind of the most stressful experience that they have. They don't know if they're supposed to go out into the travel lane, if they should stay at the curb. You inevitably kind of get honked at whatever you do. So this allows people to mount up to sidewalk grade and to use this feature to cross in a more protected manner. In some cases, there's a special signal phase that protects them as well. There's an opportunity to include some aesthetic features, landscape enhancements, special pavement as well. And so then when the light goes, so they can stage here and then they just get to go right on through and they don't have to kind of mix with traffic. This is a floating bus stop. This is a pretty, I'd say, extensive version. This would probably be in a really big city with high frequency transit. But the idea is, again, removing a conflict for people riding bikes. So rather than having the bus pull to the curb and the person on a bike have to dart out into the lane, creating a hazard for people driving and for riding a bike, they get to just stay along the curb and transit passengers get to use the island to access the bus. Here's a built example, I believe, in Seattle. Raised crosswalks, there are a lot of them around, but this is just a good example. Helps so that people don't have to go up and down, sort of gives priority to people walking. Neighborhood traffic circle. We are aware that there's been an implementation of a type of circular intersection in Imperial Beach that didn't go so well. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in the presentation. But this is an example of one that's proposed on a Sandag Bikeway project that's a little further on in design. We have done a lot of outreach. We started in, I think, the spring of 2017. We've held 3 large-scale community meetings and dozens of smaller stakeholder meetings. The first one was at Southwest High. There's a bunch of pictures. And the basic question we asked is, what places do you think the bikeway should connect? So we had a route going into the project, but we didn't think it was necessarily the best route. So we wanted to ask people, what real destinations in the community do you think are important? Then the next meeting was at your beautiful library just across the way. And the question here that we asked was, okay, we figured out, pared it down to 3 possible routes based on previous input. Which of these, and people could mix and match, do they like the most? Then we had a final meeting. The very southern part of the project down by the border was, of course, the most tricky. A lot of stuff going on down there. So we asked people, what do you prefer for that south connection? And finally, after a lot of outreach, this is the preferred route. So we've had some community members ask sometimes, how did you come up with this? Did you think about this or that? We thought about almost all of it. And this is the one that was preferred by the community ultimately. So I'm going to focus, all of this information is available online, but I'm going to focus on the Imperial Beach portion, since that's most relevant to you, starting with 13th Street. So the project would mostly enhance existing bike facilities, which you have pretty good bike facilities on 13th Street. So we connect to the Bikeway Village. We would have the bike lanes connecting south, as they do, over to Palm Avenue. This is a pretty big opportunity for this project and this capital investment because the city of Imperial Beach just gained control over Palm Ave. So there's a chance to do something to improve safety for people trying to get across this very busy street. So what this does, and I'm going to use the mouse again, is allows people riding bikes and walking to mount up to the curb, and then allows them potentially to get a head start. This is something we studied in our analysis, to get a head start across. As you see, sometimes there's intersections where it's the walk sign first and people are held on red who are driving. And then just a few seconds and then people turning right in their cars can go ahead. So this is a treatment that we're proposing here, and then a little bit of a connection on Palm, though that's frankly not very comfortable for a lot of people to ride bikes, but there are bike lanes, so connecting there. As we go south, there's already the existing buffered bike lanes. We may make some improvements. I understand from Public Works Department, you guys are thinking about maybe full green bike lanes. So those are the kind of things that as we advance the project and final design, we'll work very closely with Public Works and with the city of Imperial Beach to make sure the project complies with your standards and what you want. Continues the buffered bike lanes down to Elder Ave. And then once you get to Imperial Beach Boulevard, which I'm sure you all know and many in the audience know is a big project the city's undertaking now, we wanted to do a nice connection there. So again, this opportunity for people riding bikes to mount up to the sidewalk to get a little bit of a head start going through the intersection, provide some high visibility paint so that people feel safe and alerts drivers to something going on. And then further south, we get to the connection point. So this is Grove Avenue. This is where the project starts to head east or west, depending on which way you're coming from. And so this little section is the Imperial Beach portion of what we call a bike boulevard. And Bike Boulevard sort of sounds like a busy street or something. It's actually, it should be busy for people walking and people biking. The idea is a lot of traffic calming features to just make it safer. And this street has quite a few schools on it, kids walking and biking to school. So just to bring the speeds down a little bit. This is a graphic I just thought we'd show because the Public Works Department actually did a speed study on this part of Grove, and they found people were going less than 25 or around 25 for the 85th percentile, but it just, you know, it bears some mention to see at 25 miles an hour, still a pedestrian or a person riding a bike suffers quite a lot. So if you want to get those speeds down, which we can do through a lot of these traffic calming features, we can have much safer outcomes. So the first features you'll see on the Grove portion, we have some speed humps, and these include cutouts for emergency vehicles. Just like all of the features of the project, we're going to be working, and we actually have already started working with first responders in Imperial Beach to make sure that all the features are accessible to fire trucks, ambulances, those things. So this includes cutouts so that a fire truck or ambulance can drive through, not be slowed down, but for passenger vehicles, the average passenger vehicle does slow them down. Similar for the neighborhood traffic circle, these are great for improving air quality. You don't have as much starting and stopping or sort of speeding to the stop sign. You have a steadier flow of traffic, but slower. And then we have opportunities to do a mountable outer part where an emergency vehicle could get through just fine. They could also make left-hand turns. Meanwhile, people biking and driving just go through at a steadier, slower pace. And again, an opportunity to do some kind of aesthetic treatment like landscaping in the middle. One feature that I'll also point out is the crosswalks and the curb ramps. So if you do a circle like this, then you do directional pedestrian crossings, allowing people to sort of go along the path instead of directing them out into the middle of the intersection. You, of course, don't want that if you have a circle. Implications, though, is that sometimes there's a little bit of parking impact at the corners where you have people crossing. You want to make sure the sight lines are good so people aren't kind of darting out behind parked cars. So another instance at 15th Street. And then, yeah, just mentioning the parking impacts again. At this point, 30% design. We don't know a lot about vertical conditions. So that's what happens in final design. We're going to really tighten up our understanding of what parking impacts there might be. But anything that we do propose, any curbs that are red curbed, would be for sightlines and for safety. And we look really hard at this. It's not something we take lightly. We try to be parking neutral in all of our projects. Here's just the overall timeline for the project. We are definitely trying to stay on track with the grant. We don't have a lot of flexibility there, so we're having our environmental clearance, open house and public hearing November 13th. I'll throw up information about that. And then looking to get into construction 2021. So here's the information about the open house and public hearing. We'd appreciate, I think some of you all have already offered to share with your contacts, but November 13th at the San Ysidro Civic Center. It's from 6 to 8, and actually Chair Sanat will be acting as the public hearing officer. He was just reminded this evening. It's got to battle the 5 traffic again. And that's at 212 West Park Ave. And the whole point of the open house public hearing is to get the project environmentally cleared so that we can go on with final design. So just a quick caveat, we kind of looked at the most progressive best practice solutions for the environmental report. Things can change as we develop the project in final design, but typically only in a way where there's less impact to motor vehicle traffic and parking, things like that. The Sandag Transportation Committee will consider staff recommendation whether the project should be exempt from a full SEQRA review, and then the Board of Directors ratifies that decision at the following meeting. So the Transportation Committee meeting is the 14th of December, and then the Board of Directors the 21st. There's my contact information, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Allison, for that informative update. Do we have questions, comments? Mr. West?
First of all, Allison, I want to thank you. As a person who went to each one of these meetings, I can tell you have taken the public comment and put these into these proposals really well. I mean, let me tell you, there was a lot of people making a lot of comments, and there was different ways to do it. You were letting them write it down. So the process that you were talking about there, Chair Sinote, I think the border to Bayshore process that they put in place was excellent, and it provided a lot of really good positive feedback from the community. So first of all, thank you. So I like the ideas. I do want to make sure that that part of our community has some parking challenges. So I think it's important that we look at that, make sure, and I appreciate you talking about being parking neutral, and that's important for but I am excited about the project. One of the things I did after I got done with this is I actually went and rode this and did the actual route, and kind of going from the border to our Bayshore Bikeway. And I think it was the right choice. There were some other routes in there that would probably been a little less, would have been a little bit easier in many ways, but I think this was the right route to choose. So I look forward to it.
Great, thank you. Additional comments? Great, thank you so much. It's a project we definitely really support, and appreciate all the public input. As a longtime cyclist from the border to IB, I would never have thought of that route, and I'm really glad we had lots of public input to come up with all different alternatives. So I'm, really glad about it. And having it go through an area of IB that I wouldn't have actually thought of, but you guys have identified in the community as well as something that makes sense. So thank you. With that, I think we're great. Thank you so much, and thanks to all the staff and Chair Sino for coming down here on a busy evening and giving us all that information. Thank you so much. And now we have consent calendars 2.1 to 2.1 through 3. And before we entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar items, can I just give an update on item 2.6? So I'll be meeting with the soon-to-be ambassador of Mexico to the United States to talk about the border sewage issue. So that'll be a good update, a good opportunity to update her on that issue. Additionally, we had a good meeting with the EPA in Imperial Beach with the top officials from the EPA and other stakeholders to talk about potential investments in the region. So that was in the Tijuana River Valley. So that was good. Additionally, with the new Congress, there may be potential for a negotiated budget that includes investment in programs for the EPA that would fund border investment. So we'll see how all that plays out, but we are in constant contact with our congressional delegation as well as EPA officials and more importantly, officials in Mexico. And then tomorrow I'll be talking to the Smart Border Coalition meeting in Tijuana. That's a meeting of government officials and the business leaders in Tijuana, specifically to talk about water quality stuff. So we continue to be engaged on that. And I want to thank City Council and our city staff for being leaders on that issue as well as our residents. So anyway, with that, we'll entertain a motion to approve consent calendar items numbers 2.1 through 2.13.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. And now we have item 3.1, public hearing to receive input concerning district maps for city council elections, district boundaries, the sequencing of elections and consideration to introduce ordinance number 2018-1178, establishing a by-district election process in 4 council districts while continuing with an elective office of mayor. Public hearing is now open, and I would like to invite Doug Johnson from NDC to give a report concerning the draft maps proposed to date and potential election sequencing for a district-based election process pursuant to Elections Code Section 110. Thank you, or 10,010. Thank you.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back with you. Just as a little bit of background, just for anyone that is here who hasn't been at the previous hearings, this is all coming out of the California Voting Rights Act, which is a law that the state passed, which took the Federal Voting Rights Act and the 4 tests that jurisdictions had to fail to be in violation of the Federal Voting Rights Act, and it eliminated 2 of those tests. So now there's just the polarized voting test, and if you fail that test, then you're in violation. So it made it a lot easier for plaintiffs to bring challenges, and that's why we've seen over 100 cities, over 165 school districts, and lots of community college districts and other districts making this quit. The liability is now much easier for the plaintiffs to show. And when the plaintiffs show that, there are huge financial penalties that come for the jurisdiction. They have to pay the plaintiffs legal fees. So those fees in Palmdale was $4.7 million, and that's the only big case that's been settled and resolved. Then there's Modesto, where there's $3 million, where they just argued about the constitutionality. They didn't even get into whether the city was in violation of law. And then Anaheim, Whittier, we're seeing $1 million awards and settlements across the state, which is why all these jurisdictions are switching. So it's not that 100 cities or all these jurisdictions are violating anyone's Voting Rights Act. It's that they can't afford the financial side of this law. And the law requires a jurisdiction to go through a number of steps in this process. So we started back in September when the council first adopted the what we called a resolution of intent, a resolution saying we're going to begin this process to change the district election. We held 2 hearings in September talking about the process without any maps, as the law requires, just getting public input and educating the public on this process and what's to come. Then in October 17th and 31st, I'm sorry, on 17th, we held another hearing on the first draft maps. And then tonight, we're looking at the second hearing on the draft maps and the selection of a map, an election sequence, and introduction of the ordinance. Then the last step would be the second reading of the ordinance. These districts will phase in. So in November 2020, the first 2 districts will hold elections. And in a curious twist of timing, the lines will have to be redrawn in 2021 because of the 2020 census. So 2 seats will hold a 2020 election. Then the lines will be updated to reflect the new census data. And then the other 2 seats will hold an election in their revised lines in 2022. And it was just mentioned the mayor will continue forward on the 4-year term that it currently is on. In terms of how these lines are drawn, there are the federal laws, and these are requirements. And we've talked about these at the earlier hearing. So each district has to have an equal number of people, and it is total people as counted by the 2010 census. And then we have to follow the Federal Voting Rights Act and avoid racial gerrymandering. The avoid racial gerrymandering means that race cannot be the predominant factor. We have to focus on neighborhoods rather than on a city block by city block looking at the ethnicity of the resident. So, and then we have the traditional redistricting principles. These are where the decisions really come down, is which map best balances these goals, because you can't achieve all of them. And these are goals, not requirements. So we're looking to respect communities and neighborhoods, try to keep the lines relatively compact, try to keep them contiguous, and to follow major roads wherever we can, so it's easy for people to know which district they're in and to tell their neighbors, let's go knock on doors for this candidate. Here's the doors we knock on. You can look at trying to avoid head-to-head matches. This is so that the voters get to decide which council members have earned re-election, rather than the lines telling the voters, you may have elected these 2 before, but now you can only have 1. So it's not a requirement, but it is something you can consider. And then planned future growth is mentioned, just so it's not a surprise in 2021 when that comes up. Obviously, with just the 2020 election coming under these lines, we're not looking for growth at this point. In terms of protected classes, in Imperial Beach, where only Latinos are large enough to be a significant factor in the demographics of a district. Asian Americans, African Americans, Native Americans are the other protected classes, but they're not enough of the concentrated in any one area to influence any district demographic. So we're looking at the Latino population, and no surprise, the Latinos are concentrated in the northeast and the east part of the city. If you're looking at this map, the yellows, reds, and greens are the majority of the city blocks where there's a majority of eligible voters are Latino. Then the purple and blues are where Latinos are less than that. So again, when I talk about race not being a predominant factor, we can't just take this map and just draw around the yellow and red lines. We have to kind of take into account what this tells us about which neighborhoods as a whole are heavily one of those classes, and then look at those neighborhoods. Just looking back at the process we've been through in terms of maps, the council engaged NDC to put out some tools for map drawing, and it was great to see the public respond as we walked through the last hearing. We got 10 maps for a city that doesn't sound like a lot, but there aren't that many ways to divide up a small city. So 10 is actually pretty good when we look at the number of maps we hope to get. And there were lots of different ideas reflected in that, which was great to see. So we looked at those, the 4 of those that met all the legal requirements of contiguity and population requirement or population balance. And then NDC threw into the discussion as well 3 more maps, kind of round out the options and make sure we're all looking at really all the different looks that could be considered. And at the last meeting, the council focused really at the end, after the public comments, on a map called Rose 2 and the NDC blended map. But there were some questions asked about, some of the districts look really small and other considerations could we look at. So we have those 2 maps plus Rose B and the blended B map. And these are a little small. I don't know if we want to look at the details, we can go to the website where you can zoom in and out. That's been posted for a week now. But essentially, if you look at the Rose 2 map on the top left, you can see it really has District 1 that follows Palm and curves up as the road curves up, and then gets the east side. It gets the far kind of central east side all in a very compact District 4. Then it has all the south of the city and most of the beach in District 1, and then kind of a central northwest District 2. The changes made to reflect that, this is the map that triggered the District 4 looked really small. Even though the equal population numbers are there, it has a very small geographic area. So we're able to add in essentially everything to the south of it, which is obviously very sparsely populated. But it had some population. So you can see the western border from Rose 2 to Rose B, the western border of District 4 shifts east a little bit. And that's offsetting that population shift. So it does make it larger, gives a little more area, a little more diverse set of factors included in the district while keeping it population balanced. In both those cases, one of the things obviously we're looking at is the Latino percentage of the eligible voters, as I talked about the Voting Rights Act. In both of those maps, Latinos are a majority of the eligible voters in both Districts 1 and 4. The NDC blended map on the top right, as we talked about last time, it blends kind of horizontal seats in the far north. District 1 is north of Palm everywhere except for over on the east end of the district where it comes down to pick up a little bit more population just to meet that equal population requirement. Then District 2 is kind of horizontal, the area right, the neighborhood is right below that. And then once you get below District 2, then it's more of an east-west split. And in NDC blended map, Districts 1 and 4 are majority Latino, as they are in Rose 2 and Rose B. The changes we talked about there was a discussion how Palm, especially on the east, is a big major road. It's a clear road that divides the city. So could we not drop District 1 down across that? And you can see, sorry about the colors changing, I didn't catch that until today, but instead of dropping down on the east, in blended B, District 1 picked up that extra population in the west. Again, we're crossing Palm, but not where Palm is as big a road. The population shift is very close to balance. Just to make it work a little bit, you can see where between 2 and 3 that there's a nice clear right angle. in NDC blended versus in blended B, there's a little bit of a stair step that's just kind of smoothing out the population numbers. The only catch is that when we make that shift, where District 1 is not coming south and in the east, coming south from the west, that does take District 1 from being just over 50%, about 47% Latino citizen voting age. There's no legal law requirement, but there is more protection from a potential voting rights challenge if you stay over 50%. So the total population balances in those maps, but NDC blended is probably legally safer from a potential challenge to blend. So, and again, I'm going through this fairly briefly. We can go through any details you'd like to discuss or the public has questions about. In terms of election sequencing, the way that sequencing works is, first of all, we want to leave the voters in charge as much as possible. So wherever there's one council member in a seat, or where there's two council members in a seat that are both on the same election cycle, well, then that seat should be up in that year so that the voters get to vote on whether that council member has earned another term or not. So that's the first step. And then where there are vacant seats, and obviously in all these maps there are vacant seats, then we look at turnout. And there are different options. We can do really whatever you want, but the law does say to try to keep in mind the principles of the Voting Rights Act. And so we do recommend that the lowest turnout seats we try to put on presidential years, because that gets as many people as possible voting in city elections, because they're going to get a bump presidential year. And that's where District 4 ends up in 2020 in both of the Rose maps. So District 2 in both the Rose maps has, go back to it, actually has two council members who are both up in 2020, so it would be 2020. And then District 4 has the lowest turnout, so we put it in the presidential year 2020. And that would leave District 1 and 3. Again, there's a council member up in 2022 in 1, and then 3 would be the other seat. In the NDC blended map, it's more driven by the election years of the income. And again, when I say the election year of the incumbent, letting the voters decide whether a council member has earned re-election. And so that's where we get 1 and 2 up in 2020, and 3 and 4 up in 2020. So those are the recommended. Obviously, the council is free to do what it wants when it assigns years, as long as it's following that spirit of the California Voting Rights Act. And I'm happy to answer any questions now or after the public comment. And we are looking both to get public comment and then council input, and then hopefully to select a map and introduce the ordinance.
Thank you. Great presentation, very succinct and to the point. So I appreciate that. And then we'll do public comment first. And then, so I only have Teresa Real. And then we have 3 letters that are really well written and very easy to follow with the arguments. We have a letter from Ramon Hernandez. Mr. Hernandez, you're here. It would be great if you were interested in just communicating your letter verbally, or just want us to read it, because we have such little public comment. Okay, that'd be great. You want to fill out a blue form, that'd be great. And we have a letter from John Griffin Attil, and then we have an email from Kim Frank as well. Okay. And I'll summarize those after. Teresa, please.
Teresa, excuse me. I live at 550 13th Street. I am.
And say your name as well for the record.
Teresa Real, and I.
Can you pull the microphone further up? There you go. Thanks.
Better now.
Yeah.
So I live at the northeast corner of town. I come to Imperial Beach from Idaho, and I'm probably one of the very few people who has ever participated in brutal redistricting. It's not fun. You have a really go all the way across where you have 3 from the ocean to 13th Street. I'm baffled by the fact that we live in a town that is about 4 square miles coming from Idaho, where you measure things in hours. Well, I need to get to Lewiston. Pro Tem understands from Colorado, right? I mean, you talk about things in the Rocky Mountains with, well, it's a 4-hour drive and for back to school shopping, right? People seem to feel that way about living on 13th Street and the ocean. Oh, the bay over there. And it's like, bay over there? You can walk that far. You can take the bike path that far. I think a lot of people still feel really disenfranchised by the idea that when you have the three, like the NDC blended that go across, yeah, that's all nice and fine, but they're pretending to be inclusive of 13th Street and the East because they really can still all come from the West. They can still all come from the ocean. They can all still come from the same neighborhood. And it becomes instead, okay, well, I live here, you live enough blocks over, you could run, as opposed to a more inclusive district for the community. The other thing I would ask is that it's not like taking an etch sketch and turning it over in 2 years and starting over. Instead, it's more about that. That's why I personally like quadrants. It's more about what they've done in Rose B, where you take and you say, okay, well, I have to move a little here and I have to move a little here. One of the things that you run into when you have the three across is where's the squinchy place come, especially if you look at District 1, for example, for NDC blended. You know, where does that kind of squinchy in? So I just ask that you consider that as you go forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we have Ms. Ramon Hernandez. And for the record, Mr. Hernandez submitted a letter as well. And if there's anybody else who would like to communicate on this publicly, please let us know, and you can fill out a blue card and speak. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I submitted—
Just say your name for the record.
Ramon Hernandez, 1228 Connecticut Street, resident of IB for 21 years now. And so the letter that the exercise of, I went through the community meeting of trying to submit a map as well. And what I ended up with was something very similar to the Rose map. And so instead of submitting a map, I wrote that letter. And the reasoning behind it is that I really was trying to figure out a way that kept the neighborhoods of Imperial Beach as cohesive and together as possible as we were going through the redistricting process. So specifically like the Oneonta neighborhood, combining the Seaside and the Seacoast neighborhoods, really keeping sort of the integrity of the central neighborhood and really creating a Bayside neighborhood that reflects the needs of the Bayside area. And then also taking into account sort of future ideas that would be happening with the building happening on the Strand with the Navy, also the work that's happening on Palm Avenue, and then the ongoing issues that are, I live, as I said, on 1228 Connecticut with the noise and also our closeness to living to the estuary and to the issues that we speak about a lot with the sewage and with water issues. And so I think that Rose B does a really good job at keeping our neighborhoods intact and sort of the day-to-day life of how our residents and we live in Imperial Beach. And I also spoke to why I wasn't in full favor of the blended sort of east-west, because I think that in those kinds of scenarios, that similar to the resident who spoke before me, that in there you could still have people who are elected who live on the ocean side of Imperial Beach and not truly reflect the neighborhoods that we're trying to give more voice to. So that I think that again, that Rose B does a better job at keeping the voices of the resident intact, the day-to-day life of the neighborhoods intact. And while probably not perfect, I think it does the best job. So
we really appreciate that input. Great. I know Mr. McKay, Mr. Pilgrim, you had made inputted maps. Would you like to get up and make any comments, or I'm not trying to pick on you. I just want to make sure that and you can fill out a blue card afterwards. But as a fellow map maker, I just want to make sure the community of map makers had an
All right,
opportunity to give
thank
their input.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening on the election districting topic. I did submit 2 maps. One was kind of a preliminary rough draft. The second one was more based on the population requirement of the districting map. I believe my map met lower than 4% differential between each of the 4 districts. Mine was very close to NDC's quadrant map, which, like previous 2 speakers, I believe is, while it does only leave 1 person to cover the beach, I think it does do a better job of sort of addressing the neighborhoods aspect of the request. I realize there is a lot of activity on the beachfront, and that requires a lot of activity by the council members, and maybe something that has at least 2 council members addressing the beachfront is maybe a little more fair to staff and the council members. But I think, again, the quadrant does a better job of sort of addressing and preserving neighborhood type issues. Again, like was brought up by the first 2 speakers. And, you know, the intent of the voters law, voters rights law, was to address groups that are protected or underrepresented. And I think, although it may be easier for the city council members to address city issues with the blended, I really don't think it speaks to the neighborhood issues, nor does it provide, accurate representation for those groups that are underserved or disenfranchised from the election process. I think if we look at the election that happened yesterday, unfortunately, we only had about 27% of the registered voters in Imperial Beach show up to vote, which I think is just, it's terrible. I can't understand it. I mean, it was a very, very interesting election with a lot of issues, a lot of topics that still need to be sorted out. But
I think there's like between 1,000 and 1,500 votes felt maybe possibly to count.
Okay. Well.
Yeah. So
okay,
anyway, but it's still low.
So
you're
again,
right.
yeah, it's very low.
Yeah. No,
and I
I
know
agree.
traditionally that's been the case, but I would hope that something like this would sort of break that mold and break that tradition or that trend, and get people in these neighborhoods that are, you know, eastern, western, or whatever we want to call them, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, red, blue, green, orange, who cares, would get those people interested in the election and interested in the people that are going to represent them. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk this evening.
Thank you so much.
Again,
I really
Mitch
appreciate
McKay,
your involvement. Yeah.
714 Holly Avenue.
This is probably there's never really been a process like this in the city where people have to make maps and comment on them. So it's been really, really
I
important.
appreciate being invited to do that.
Great. Thank you so much. Mr. Pilgrim, you're a map maker. Did you have any comments? And then Mr. Zeke, I know you're the only representative, I think, from the, well, one besides Ms. Riel from the north side. Did you want to speak at all? Okay. All right, good. Let's make sure we have the geographic representation and folks involved, and your name for the record as well.
Dick Pilgrim, 1182 5th Street. And it doesn't make any difference which map. I'm in the same block, so it doesn't really personally affect me. I'm probably the initial map I came up with was more like Rose B in the sense of blocking off. The only thing I looked at is we do know that the economic engine for the city is the beach and will remain the beach. And I think that we need representation on the council. Regardless of how you do it, there is a certain amount of provinciality that's built into districting. We have to live with it. We're going to live with it. And I think everybody needs to have a stake. I understand and appreciate the neighborhood, and I think a good job was done on trying not to break up neighborhoods. I really appreciate, I could live with any of those maps, frankly, but I really think that the economic engine that drives the city is still the beach. This is not to downplay the activity on 13th and certainly not along Palm, but we have to pay attention to the needs of the beach. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you guys can fill out blue cards. Any additional comments from the public? Okay, and then we have additional letters from, and these are available in the public record. Reverend John Griffith, Attell, Executive Director, IB Neighborhood Ministry Center, Chair, IB Collaborative. He recommends it's a good letter, an NDC quadrants draft map. And he also thinks that we should have districts be named rather than numbers. Or I guess he's advocating that we would have numbers and names. So anyway, and then Kim Frank wrote an email today at 5 p.m. and she advocates, she says the beach community is vitally important to all IB, and the Rose B and Rose 2 maps will still provide an opportunity for up to 2 council members from the west end of town as 2 council members. So anyway, and then she says the blended B and NDC blended district maps could likely lead to continued overrepresentation from the west side of town and continued disenfranchisement voters in the east. So anyway, thank you for all that comments. I'm going to make sure everybody had an opportunity to comment and give feedback. So anyway, good. With that, we will start the public comment period. Council member comment period. Mr. Patton, do you have questions or comments? Or
no, just a comment.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, like Mr. Pilgrim said, like all these maps really could do. But I was really taken by the speakers that spoke tonight, and it really enlightened me a lot about going all the way from east to west, opposed to something like Rose B, or more like quadrants. And some really good points. So thank you for speaking. Especially you had that experience in where you used to live. Personally, I know all the map makers that put in maps really put in a lot of effort. I know Diane Rose very well, and as a city council member and mayor, I think over 12 years in the city, she knows this city like the back of her hand. And I really like about Rose B is that we have 2 sections reaching the beach that can cover that area that go well east, and then the other 2 sections they look proportionally really well. I mean, they look like they work. And when I look at the blended or either of the blended section 4, it's its own little island by itself, not represented with the beach at all. And I don't know how they might feel. So personally, if we're looking for a vote right now, for me, it's a Rose B. And I'm just going to leave it at that so we can move on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Mr. Spriggs.
I don't really have strong feelings about any particular map. I do have a couple, a couple concerns. I think that having 3 coastal council members that are at the same time 3 eastern border is fine. I think because the coast is the economic engine of Imperial Beach and will continue to be. I mean, it's Imperial Beach. That's an important consideration. But I also think that 2 on the coast and 2 inland, which would be Rose B, is fine. The mayor is going to be at large, and I don't think any mayor could of this city going forward could neglect the engines of growth of the city. So that still gives adequate representation, I think, as well as to the eastern parts of the city. Blended B and Rose B. No, I'm sorry. Blended B only has 1 majority minority area. That's a potential weakness. NDC blended runs all the way across, but has 2 majority minority areas, and Rose B has 2 majority minority areas. So I think all things considered, maybe Rose B, as Councilmember Patton suggested, might be what we settle on. Couple concerns. We just had an election. We have 2 council members who are potentially competitors in one area going into 2024, 2022, that live in the same area, which is the Area 3 in all of the maps. And I don't know what we do about that, because that's sort of violates one of the general, not mandatory ideas. It just doesn't look like there's a solution to that situation. So I just make that comment. Maybe you can comment on it at some point. The other thing I'd like to comment on, and I ask for your indulgence, colleagues, for this, is that this is the last opportunity, really, for us to essentially decide whether we're going to give districting a second thought or not. I mean, once we go past this point, we're pretty much committed. We are, I mean, I'd say probably 95% committed already. But with this last election and the outcome of the election in terms of having a Latina now coming onto the city council, it bears just giving it a little bit of thought in terms of whether we have, with that fact, and I would suggest 6 other unique facts that I would again pose to our demographer and our city attorney, whether or not, you know, it puts us in a position to even consider whether we want to divide up our town, whether there are other ways to achieve the objectives of the California Voting Rights Act. So I mentioned the first one. We have a Latina on the city council who will be a council member elect, who is a council member elect. Secondly, we can initiate a comprehensive bilingual voter education, voter representation, registration, I should say, and voter assistance program in Imperial Beach. We're small enough to do that, focused on the low to moderate income households or households not registered or households that are registered but are not voting. We can actually do something unique, probably in California, by empowering the parts of our community that have not really been participating to the same degree. Without districting, we can do that. Districting, by the way, doesn't guarantee, any of these maps does not guarantee that there is going to be another Latino or Latino or Latina on the city council from one of those areas. It doesn't. But actively working towards civic education, voter registration, and voter participation by mail or on election day in these areas would probably have a greater chance of ensuring representation than mere districting alone. And therefore comply with the spirit of the California Voting Rights Act. Third, we can run this as a pilot for a specific number of election cycles. We're not asking for permanent exclusion from the California Voting Rights Act provisions, but an experiment, a pilot, to see if we can't engage more voters across the board in Imperial Beach. This turnout was shameful. We need to do something about that in general in Imperial Beach, but certainly with respect to the overrepresented population groups that are underrepresented politically, we definitely need to do something about it. So I would say that this is something that we should be doing anyway, and it would be something we could sincerely undertake as a pilot effort over the next 3 election cycles. If we don't see data change, if the data and outcomes don't change in terms of voter participation and result and impact, or whatever criteria we decide on in that period, then we would go to a districting situation. Which brings me to the 4th point. We're going to have to revisit the districts anyway after the 2020 census. So why not adopt a set of actions that incorporate the 2020 census into a plan that would or would not make this decision based on the results of this comprehensive effort and in an election after 2020? I would say we'd need 3 election cycles. That would take us to 2024 probably, to really see if it's working. We're only asking for an opportunity to comply with the spirit of the act. We're already a small community. Why divide into even smaller parts that are not viable? So that's the other point. We're already very small. 6th and next to last, there's no guarantee, and I mentioned this before, there's no guarantee that simply drawing lines is going to change representation. More is needed. So this is not necessarily a true solution. Why don't we try something, that could work? Finally, 6 more years with all these efforts going on to really make our city more democratic. At least 4 of which will have a Latina on the city council. Those 6 years, that pilot program would not in any way cause any irreparable harm to the Latino community, that is the protected class that this is all being done around in Imperial Beach. We would in fact be empowering that community. They would already be empowered with, according to the theory of the CVRA and all of this, with a representative on the city council. So asking for a stay, negotiating with the attorney a deal where we would stay this for 6 years while we try this unique effort is something that we could try to do. Now we can proceed right now with moving forward. The question is it worth opening up a discussion around these kinds of points with the attorney who's pushing this? And put a feather in his cap about actually catalyzing something unique in the state of California in Imperial Beach. We pride ourselves on being a leading community in innovation in so many ways, particularly with respect to the environment. We could also be a leader in innovation regarding compliance with the spirit of the CVRA by doing this, or at least attempting to negotiate it. Failing to do so means we're just going to we're going to carve up our community without even an effort. I think we ought to make the effort. So those are my points. Thank you.
When I look at our maps and I look at the things that we're going through, I refrain from trying to look at it with words that are making us seem like we're somehow doing harm to our city. I actually think that there is something to say about we can do this in a way that makes it a very good project and a very good way to move forward for our community. We tend to think of this as a way to be more divisive. Well, I think we can actually make this a way to get one, you could have a council member who could be even more in tune to the things that he's going on to. So I like the points that you're bringing up, but I also think that if we were to look at Mr. Schenkman's history, I also think we may be putting a gun to our head a little bit because we don't have much time to ask him if he's willing to stay this. And his history throughout our state has not been one that he is willing to stay it. He has been very straightforward about litigation in the past. I think I'm not. Yeah, I know. I agree it's a moneymaker, and he's almost made that perfectly honest. But I don't think that we are at the point now where I think that the community we need to make a decision for the community based on what we've had. And I think I'm going to be honest with you. The input that I've received from the community, there's been some people who've complained, but a lot of people are they've been engaged about this. I mean, we've got letters. These are the most letters we've had. We had great meetings. I'm pretty impressed by our community So I do believe that we did get a Latina elected. The first time in Imperial Beach's history we had a Latina get elected. 48%. Yeah, first time. 48% of our community is we're still underrepresented even with her elected. So I think that it's right. I am very happy. Thank you, Ms. Rial. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. McKay, Pastor John. I appreciate all that you've given. I am leaning towards that. I think that it's the right thing to do is to work with the Rose B. I think it's a good map. I think it's Mayor Rose is probably watching this right now and with popcorn and enjoying this. But she maybe had a glass of wine probably. But I think that this is she definitely put her heart and soul into this, and I think that it's the right thing to do, and I see that as one. I do think it is very disappointing that we have to revisit these in 2 years, but I don't think we're going to be doing, what we've seen, and Mr. Real brought this point up, is that it's not we will revisiting, but it won't be major changes. I think we're going to see the one thing that I'm most concerned about is our beach, yes, but also our economic engine that I see on Highway 75 now that we're taking that over. I think that that's something that we need to be watching as well. That is something that could be a real economic engine that we're not really planning on, and that could really change and make that one curve there something else. So I think that I'm more in tune to go ahead and move forward with this, but it's based on because we are going to revisit this, and it gives us a trial option. So, and it gives us a way to look at this and maybe make some changes for 2020 in a better way. So I am fully supportive of Rose B and moving forward.
Thank you. In comparing the four maps, I immediately discarded blended B because there was only one district that met the majority minority. So I just kind of set that one aside. I'm going to stick to what I said originally about I think it's important that our elected officials, that three of them in this NDC blended, there would be three that would deal with the issues of the coast all the way to the most eastern portion of the community. The NDC blended, as do both Rose 2 and Rose B, they have two districts with a majority minority. They all meet the population requirements, which was important to me as well. And I said earlier at our last meeting that yes, the author of Rose 2 and Rose B, she does know the neighborhood. She does know her community well. I think it's important to note that whoever is elected from whatever district is here to represent every single person in this community, not from a particular neighborhood. I think that's the clear message that we need to stick with throughout this process. There's saving grace that in 2020 we can move these lines a little bit more, and then again we have another opportunity. So this is a work in progress. It's something that there can be minor changes, but my first choice is NDC blended. My second choice would be the Rose B district map. Thank you.
And so anyways, I want to thank everybody for that, and the city council again for your thoughtful comments and really going into detail, looking at maps. So with that, I'd like to see if there's a motion to support Rose B. I have to close the public hearing first, though. To close the public hearing, and there's no more public comment, right? Is that right? Correct? Great. So I'd like to get a motion on the
Mr.
table.
Mayor, I did want to ask our demographer the question about not the long question, but he had a response.
I thought you'd asked all your questions or made all your comments.
Yeah. It's actually a question regarding the.
So I'm unclosing the public hearing. Is that correct? Or is the public hearing closed?
You can go ahead and leave it open for this for the last
Okay,
exchange.
then I have to close it again.
Yes.
Okay, I'm reopening the public hearing and allowing the questions. Or
Okay.
Moving forward with the question.
The two questions were, this series of things we could try to do experimentally. And I know your expertise is demographics, but you worked on a lot of these before. But I also asked our city attorney at the same time to weigh in on this. Whether it's worth considering. Now, I also understand on that question from that the council may want to go ahead with districting, and that's fine too. But if we want to have one shot at a discussion with the attorney, then I think that would be fine too. So there's your reaction to that. But also the question of two council members in one district. And what has been the experience that you've had in how that gets reconciled, or whether it's an issue or not in reality?
So let me take them in the reverse order because it's easier. The two council members together, if they're on different election years, that's a real mess because then the council has to essentially vote one of them off. We hate to see pairings because, again, that takes the choice away from the voters. But the nice thing here is that in the Rose maps, there's a pairing in 2, and with the election results, there's now a pairing in 3. Each of them has 2 council members. But in both cases, both council members are on the same year. And so then the silver lining is that both can run. It's not your vote tonight will not tell any council member this is your last term and you're on. So both will have the option to run. Unfortunately, the voters won't have the option to re-elect both of them. Use one of the other. So that takes a lot of the potential hostility and poison that comes with that out of it, which is nice. The other piece is in 2021, we will be revisiting the lines depending on how your populations shift and how the districts are in play. There may be the chance then to separate the two who are up in 2022. So they may not have to run against each other. Given where they live, that'd be a pretty big shift. So it's unlikely that will solve it, but it's out there as a possibility. So it is something we try to avoid, but in this case, at least it's not the council voting one of their fellow council members for lack of ability. And we see it play out all kinds of ways. It does lead to more challenges to mayors, where somebody chooses to run for the mayor post. We're seeing this up in Carlsbad right now, rather than councilman running, since her seat ended up in the wrong year, she ran for mayor. We do see that, but that's really the main outcome. In terms of the voter education, voter registration project, we actually worked with 20 years ago, 15 years ago, yes, with Vista. The Department of Justice came in with a federal challenge of Vista, and they launched a big task force and education thing. Got a lot of attention. If you read the newspaper articles, that's credited with making the Department of Justice go away. What's rarely mentioned is that actually the Department of Justice had bad data, and they didn't have a majority Latino seat, so their federal case fell apart. That was a very nice space-saving way to go away. And while it worked great there, it actually led to their first Latino elected. It got a lot more Latinos registered. The moment this law became law, I think it was Mr. Shankman, somebody hit them with the California Voter Rights Act complaint, and they were forced into district despite having had that program in place. And as you mentioned and others have mentioned, some groups, notably up in the Central Coast, some of the groups have been open to alternatives, solutions, or delaying the input. Mr. Shankman has never. There might be a first, but when we've gone to him, I've spoken to him personally saying, in one school board, Trustee Johnson, her maiden name is actually Ortega. She's actually a first-generation American. She's Latina. Her parents are both from Mexico. His response was, well, let's go discuss it with the judge. He's never, again, things change, but he's always been looking for, how do I get them to court? And the possibility is there that you could ask him and he could not respond, and just on day 91 too. So that's a fear. I think it's fantastic when we work with Vista, and other jurisdictions have similarly done outreach efforts. I entirely think those are great ideas. They're also great ways to get high schoolers involved, because often the best way to get the parents to register is to get the high schoolers to go home and ask them to register. But I've never seen it help at all avoiding behavior.
Even if we did do it, let's say we did the district, we could still do all those things that you're suggesting. So you could do it either way.
Right. And I think, I'm just guessing, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the fact that while you did elect your first Latina, she's not from the Latina, or she doesn't live in the Latina neighborhood. So that could also factor.
Thank you so much. Could you put the map of the sequence of elections? You had that one slide that had just
links on the
We have to support-
ordinance.
We have to vote, but then we have to vote for the ordinance. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So it'd help if I know which map and the sequencing that you want with that map, that follows the map, because then when you make your motion to introduce the ordinance, I can fill those in for you, and then the ordinance is complete.
So is there a motion to recommend?
Motion for Rose B.
And the sequence, and election
The
sequencing?
second.
And the recommended election sequencing, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the election sequence is on the map is the 2020 is 2 and 4.
4.
Okay. And okay, 2022
Did
is
someone
1.
second that? You want?
No, I did.
There you go. Okay, great. Do we vote on that then?
Mhm.
Okay. Please vote.
Motion carried by the following votes: ayes, Dedina, West, Patton, Spriggs, noes, Bragg.
Madam Clerk, please read the title of the ordinance.
Ordinance number 2018-1178, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Imperial Beach, California, establishing a by-district election process in 4 council districts while continuing with an elective office of mayor pursuant to California Elections Code Section 10010 and California Government Code Sections 34871C and 34886, and amending Imperial Beach Municipal Code Title II, Administration and Personnel, to provide for city council election districts.
Thank you. I'd like to entertain a motion to introduce ordinance number 2018-1178 by title only, waive further reading, and set the matter for second reading and adoption at the next regularly scheduled meeting.
So moved.
And
I'm sorry.
before that, let me just read the to complete ordinance 2018-1178 on page 3 of 7. The second to last recital says, whereas it is the view of the city council that map blank, so that will be filled in with that map Rose B, attached hereto as Exhibit A, will serve the best interests of the city of Imperial Beach. And then the other blanks are on page 5 of 7 of ordinance 2018-1178. In section 2.14.030A, it will say consistent with sections 2.14.010 and 2.14.020, council members from council districts 2 and 4 shall be elected beginning at the general municipal election in November of 2020 and every 4 years thereafter, as such council district shall be amended. And then section 2.14.030B will read consistent with sections 2.24.010 and 2.14.020, the council members from council districts 1 and 3 shall be elected beginning at the general municipal election in November 2022 and every 4 years thereafter, as such council district shall be amended. So those would be the changes. I do note that in section B, it should say 2.14.010. So with those changes, if the council would make the motion to introduce that and second that, then you can vote on the.
Okay, is there a motion?
There is a motion.
Did you guys first it and second?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Please vote.
And it is.
Motion carried by the following votes: ayes, Dedina, West, Patton, Spriggs, noes, Bragg.
The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Let me just add that you might mention to Ms. Rose that this next fall, the California Redistricting Commission will be taking applications. And now that she's brought it up.
You don't have to say it. She probably saw that.